This rewind is brought to you by shirts. Shirts, I have them now. Hello and welcome to Braithel's Rewind, the show where I 200 older characters so you don't have to. Today we'll be taking a look at one of my favorite Toshiros in the game, the Lost Agent Toshiro, who in my opinion still has the coolest art out of any of the Toshiros. Suck it, manga Toshiro. That's an opinion, don't at me. But regardless of what you think of the art, the fact remains that this character is still well over a year old, so it's time to see if he's still usable. As always, I started with the normal attack damage build, and with an attack of 630, it's really not that high, but it is higher than some of the other characters we've had on Rewinds, whose normal attack still ended up being usable. Unfortunately though, Toshiro kinda falls in a weird area, because his normal attack isn't exactly great. The damage is alright, and he does have an Arankar killer, which is helpful, not to mention the plus 20 bruiser, but it's a little bit slow for my taste, and I felt that the reach was lacking. However, I'm still gonna say this is a viable build, for a very odd reason being his strong attacks. While I did have his SP at 0 for this build, they were still pretty useful, because he has Frenzy, they still hit twice, and it doubles the chance of inflicting the freezing. Not only that, but his strong attacks do have a really good range, and he has a vortex move, though it doesn't last very long. It still helps trap enemies in one spot while he hits them with his normal attack, and that proved to be useful in more than one occasion. I still wouldn't use this build in any co-op stuff, but for single player stuff it's perfectly usable. Next up we have the strong attack damage build, which I'm sure you guys are gonna know how this is gonna turn out, seeing as his SP is actually pretty high, though not as high as it once was in relation to the new characters. Still, it's more than enough to take out some of the harder raids, and his strong attacks all have really good reach and inflict debilitating freezing. I will say it does kind of suck to have a strong attack that's a vortex move for this character, but it does do a little bit more damage than other vortexes since it doesn't last as long. If I had one complaint though, it would be the fact that when you use up your strong attacks, you only have your normal attacks to use. And by themselves without any boost, they don't do that much damage and they do kinda suffer from the slow and lack of range that I mentioned earlier. Still, if you dodge until they come back, this is really not that big of a deal, and it's why this build is still viable, even if you do have to wait it out. Finally, we have the strong attack recharge build, and this is by far my favorite. It completely bypasses everything I didn't like about the strong attack damage build, which is essentially just the waiting. I did have to use my normal attacks every now and then, but it was only to pick off the little bit of health that was left on the enemies. That is, if there was ever any, because these strong attacks still do a decent amount of damage, and keep in mind for these rewinds I really only like to increase the stats by 100%, so if you go over that you really shouldn't have a problem. Not to mention that for a character like this with debilitating freezing on everything, a strong attack recharge build is actually the best way to go about it, since it increases the probability of inflicting freeze on the enemies. Which again, if you knock him out in one hit, it's not a problem. So yeah, this build is absolutely viable, and I would actually take it on the hardest of missions now, which is saying a lot for a character that came out so long ago. So there you have it. I'm really glad I got to do a rewind on this character. In my opinion, he's kind of a lost gem, someone that everybody used to use a lot a long time ago, and just kind of forgotten over time, due to the addition of much better characters. Still, it's a really good one to use, and if you have him, I do recommend you use him for old time's sake, just to see how well he's held up. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more Toshiro Week.